we are treading very, very lightly right now. We're about to sink. If we don't snap out of this and remove this spell, what some people call it a Wetiko virus, if we don't shed the parasite or eviscerate it at its spine, we're going into another realm of living. And that's not going to be pretty. And technology is not going to save us. And we have to be very prudent right now. And these types of conversations have to be taken very serious.
Welcome to the Deja Blu Podcast, where we believe that living a life of magic can be the default. Join us each week as we playfully and authentically dive into the mysteries of life and explore what it truly means to be human. From spirituality, wellness, and all things taboo, we don't hold anything back. So without further ado, let's let the magic unfold. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to another episode of the Deja Blu Podcast. We have a full house today. We have two members in the audience. We've got Matrix, and I'm really excited for the first time ever that I've actually been able to drop in with this legendary brother is on today's podcast. So you're getting it firsthand of the moment we actually start weaving. And I did a little bit of research before you came on the podcast today, and just like listening to you in my ears, and the amount of wisdom that is packed in one body is pretty remarkable. You're like Codemaster 5000, like a sprinkling system that's just like and just throwing out these facts about health that I'm like, wow. And just realizing when I hear you speak that she's getting it.
She's loving it.
She's loving it. She's already like making sure that we're breaking the ice. So you get your feet licked by Lily. It's part of the initiation of coming on the podcast.
Totally.
What I'm realizing when I hear you speak is that knowledge truly is power, and the amount of power that you've packed yourself with from offering and devoting a life to understanding health and wellness, not just mentally, but physically, spiritually, financially, sexually, multidimensionally, on all planes of existence, recognizing it's all interconnected. And so the weavings of your teaching feels very multidimensional, as opposed to just sort of the 3D approach that doctors or health has been sort of fed to me since I was young. So there's so much space and power that is born through what it is that you've cultivated yourself through. So you are the founder of Symbiotica, which is one of the leading supplement companies in the world, fastest growing supplement company in the world, which is profound, as well as the host of Wake the Fake Up. Making sure that I said that right. Podcast where you interview spiritual leaders and thought leaders at the edge of their craft. And Lily, come on.
No,
she's like, are you okay? I didn't know if you were vibing. Some people are like, can you please get your dog off of me?
It was going with all your words. I was feeling
She's just an extension
alchemy.
of me. I'm like celebrating you. And she's like, I got it, Mom. So thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing in the world, for activating and illuminating us to be able to have a deeper empowerment and a relationship with our bodies.
Thank you for seeing me. I appreciate that. That was well received, and it's such an honor. And I always say, whatever you're feeling and seeing is what you're seeing in yourself. That's how you can recognize it. And so all of that is just a complete amalgamation of so many beautiful people in my life and people that I've had the experience to learn from and to be able to, wave through this crazy ride we call life. And I never get too intellectual in my thinking, and I never get too spiritual in my thinking. My whole trip is to find balance between both worlds. And that's where I can find a divine plan and execute it. I think we get too caught up in idealism and too much thought. And I was a dreamer as a child, but I also was motivated as a generator to produce and to make it happen. And I think that's something that I embody, and I like to teach through the embodiment, not through the intellectualism. There's a lot of intellectualism today, especially with where we're at with technology and the internet and all those things. Not enough people doing it. And we need more doing. And that can go for everything from our health field to our medical system to schools and teachings, how that whole thing's working out, to our financial systems. There's a lot of people that are doing things that aren't actually producing anything. It's just a different layer upon layer that's not adding up to, substantial material stuff that people can use to better their lives. And so I really appreciate that. The Symbiotica journey has been wild to say the least. It's been a dream come true. And I'm in full reverence for the path that I'm on right now and all the beautiful people that are around me.
I'm so curious, how did you get on this path? Because from my perspective, you waltz into my world, I tune into what it is that you're sharing, and I tune into Symbiotica and the amount of individuals that are being impacted. And I'm like, whoa, how did this guy get here? I want to understand, like, what got you on this path of really being not just committed, but devoted to longevity, health, and wellness.
It's, I think it's a unique karma, some kind of karma that I'm living in this life. I come from immigrant parents that, left a country that was ancient in every practice. And I was born as a firstborn son of that ethnicity in America, which is a melting pot of people. And just that in itself, sometimes some people take that for granted and don't realize how big that is. 1,000 of my grandfathers, 2,000 of them grew up in a certain region of, the Middle East and Iran or ancient Persia. And I'm just happened to be the firstborn son out of that entire lineage that was born in North America, which is just a term. We don't even really know what it truly means to be on another part of this world. And to have the teachers that I had at such an early age, and to be introduced to anthroposophy, which is Rudolf Steiner's theosophy, at such an early age, and to go into a mystic cultivation of my life at such an early age. You can't really make that up. It's some kind of story, and we're all living some kind of story. It's just how far can we get out of the rat race and the materialism to really step back and see that there is some form of destiny here. And I felt that at an early age. I felt it. I knew it. I wasn't oblivious to what the experience was. And I also was building super sensible knowledge or logic, where I was having experiential, direct observational awareness in my reality, meaning I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time in nature. I spent a lot of time as a kid really exploring what this body is. And I remember feeling like, wow, like I'm in this body, and this body can receive things, through sight and through sound and touch and smell. Like the senses were really trippy to me at age 7 or 8. And, I meet a lot of people that have that similar experience. And it's really powerful to have that mutualism, to know that you're not alone in those thoughts at such an early age. And that drove me to be, where I am today, along with such a crazy ride. So I'm a researcher, I'm an investigator, I'm skeptic by nature, but I'm also accepting into the laws of this world, the deep principles of as above, so below, and from within, like kind of a quasi-Persian Hermes Trismegistus walking around in the modern 21st century Gregorian calendar. And I want to flip everything over and say, wait a second, I don't think this is right. Nah, I don't think we need to, pigeonhole this thought or this emotion or the way that, history has been told. So, being a conspiracy theorist at such an early age and having been mentored by David Wolf when I was 10, when he was becoming a famous raw foodist. That's my cousin. And so having that tutelage, and then being introduced to David Icke at age 12 and reading Children of the Matrix and Truth Shall Set You Free, I had this kind of being rattled in that cage while I'm a kid in La Jolla, California, surfing every day, athlete, balancing that realm as well. And that's when it hit me. Our systems are falling apart. Our systems are not based on thriving. And a lot of people are getting caught in the trap. And I felt that empathetic heart. I feel what other people's feel. I know that it's very cliche in the community to establish yourself as a well-known empath. That's something that's out there. And I didn't know what that meant at age 12, but I felt for the other kids. I knew I was the kid that was going into other kids' refrigerators with their parents and say, you keep giving Johnny that homogenized antibiotic-filled milk. That's probably why he can't communicate with you properly. That's probably why you guys are yelling all the time, is because his system is going into default networks of pain and confusion because of the amount of rancidity that's happening in the body. I was that kid, like blowing parents' minds open. Either they loved me or they hated me. Get out of the house. It was just on that level. And I knew it. I knew there was something going on outside of the normal. I was always outside of that cage. And that just pushed me to keep going with my studies and all that stuff, to the point where I became militant by the time I was 17 or 18. I thought I was going to be part of some kind of revolution. I had a Tupac energy, fuck the world type energy. I didn't have a spiritual practice. I thought it was more of a crusade against like me versus the bad guys. Mm-hmm. I think everyone kind of goes through that process during some form of awakening. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it just opened up into a worldly expression of love. And that was through my father's foundational wisdom. I had a very logical father that was not jumping around with pain or fear and using that as, a threatening mechanism for me. He was my mother. He was my father. He was everything you can imagine, and a very strong, safe place for me. And I had that incubated within my soul and his spirit. And that put me into a place where I wanted to explore more into my heart, because how could we just be material with some kind of, when an angel like that exists in my life? And that was a big stepping stone for me to step away from the conspiracy and go more into the heart. And that took me on a radical adventure of, deep, deep samadhi work, practice of dying before dying, living in the jungles, spending time with shamans, spending time in the medicine world, and going deeper into my anthroposophy and Steiner's true work outside of Waldorf education and biodynamic farming. And that's when the floodgates open of just complete, super sensible knowledge and the ego collapse of the false scarred up tissue ego, not the beautiful ego that we all should nurture. I don't fall victim to starve the ego, feed the soul. I don't think that makes sense. We all need to know who we are without taking it too seriously or too overboard in the way we behave with others and the way that we push ourselves to drive, because we should be driven in this life. We should be having purpose. We should take pain and put it into other purposeful things in life. And that's just really how I live my life. I live my life with that perspective on how I manage relationships, how I manage myself, and how I go about everything. One of our main thing is how you do anything is how you do everything, literally. And to embody that in every action as a, anthroposophist or as a Rosicrucianist or any of those different ancient, mystic, I would say, personality traits or actions is giving you a position to thrive in this life. It's the unconscious behavior in anything that we do that is some form of escapism that takes us away from being hyper present. And the system right now is preying on that. We've never hit this level of materialism. And materialism, I don't mean your Fendi bag and your beautiful, whatever, Rolls Royce. Materialism is the concept that, there's nothing separate from you and I. We're just body and flesh and bone, and we're of the earth. That's it. There's nothing outside of that. And it's a pseudo-scientific perspective that's become the new false religion. We had all kinds of religions up until 16, 17, 1800s that were governing the way life worked. From the Catholic Church to the Islamic priesthood to the whole thing, go on and on. It was all religious controlling the world. Entire governments, entire systems were predicated on the religious laws. And then that slowly morphed into a renaissance of self-discovery and enlightenment and science. And the science over the last 150, 200 years has become the new religion, where science should never be a dogmatic faith. Science should be something that's tested and continued to test through the scientific method. And we've given ourselves up to science, and we've lost our ability to expand our consciousness. And that's why we're in the rat race that we're in right now, and we're dealing with the problems we're dealing with. It's not confusing to understand why we're in the position we're in today. Now, I'm not saying the glass is half empty. I'm just saying that we've led ourselves off the path, And it's pretty obvious. It's not just because we have 8 billion people here. It's because the soul of the earth is not connected to the soul spirit of the human being. We've granted ourselves to be stewards of the earth, but we're not stewarding right now. We're just escaping, and we're trying to get through. And there's tons of reasons why that's the case. Generation loss, the way we're birthing children, the way we're developing cosmic relationships. The whole social media stuff is not helping at all. There's just so many things that are collapsing. We're not growing our own food. Just that in itself right there, I can take you down a whole rabbit hole filled with tunnels and patterns and root systems that show that just that sacred act of cultivating your own food as a child and the developing faculties that brings a child in terms of empathy and love and responsibility, what that brings to their spirit and be able to be an embodied spiritual being, just that alone, there's so much to cover in that area. So you asked me, how did I get here? I got here through self-exploration and sitting in the fire and going through tragedies and, getting out on top, and also seeing life as the cosmic giggle too, right? There's something to that as well, where it's like, okay, this is it. This is the greatest fucking mission of all time. I'm here for it. So I didn't mean to go into a long-winded speech, but
no, I love it. I'm here for it. This is why we're doing the podcast.
that just kind of rolled out, because that's really where I'm at, with a lot more in between. Thank you for asking that.
I'm hanging on every word. Like, okay. I want you to go, spread your wings and let the long-winded answers come in, because there's so much nutrients in one sentence alone.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to witness the way that I am relating to my own life and witnessing opportunities to grow through the words that you're sharing. And so I feel like there's just so much nutrients to be able to receive from your shares. There's something that really stood out to me around the direction that we're moving in, the systems of control that are collapsing. We can see it all around us. We're about to host an event. I'm hosting an event you're going to be attending on May 7th with Richard and Zach Bush, Richard Rudd, and having a conversation around what really is the prophecies of what's going to happen in 2027. Because according to the Gene Keys, there's a full degree shift in consciousness by 2027. 2012 was a half degree shift. So we're gearing ourselves up. So I would love to hear your perspective of an elaboration of what you're saying, like in the direction that we're moving in, and how you believe that we can individually prepare ourselves, and therefore then how we can plug into our loved ones and our communities.
Yeah, I love both those, man. I just had Zach at our house, and we had a conversation together where it felt like ceremony. It felt like I was sitting in a triple concentrated ayahuasca ceremony. I mean, it was on that level. And I think these are the conversations that are needed and should be cultivated and considered the norm. This is really where we're at today, is that we do have some drastic things happening around us. We can't put our head in the sand and think that we can namaste our way out of that. There has to be a level of contribution by everyone, and stewardship and human agency has to take hold, where we're stepping into our power and we're realizing that we're here for a reason. We're not here to just pass time and entertain ourselves and go through the same karmic loop cycles that our parents did, or even the same cycles that we did since we were teenagers. It's like, okay, at some point, it's like, all right, you're going to learn from that lesson or not? Like, at some point, it's not medicine anymore. It actually becomes poison, because this life is short. This physical body is short. We're a drop of water in the ocean of time, as Rumi says. And so in terms of the Gene Keys, you're speaking about us metaphorically and metamorphically turning into a triple helix kind of genetics situation. And I'm all there 100%. I mean, I think there's no other way. If we don't build internal faculties that are spawning new actions in this life, we're going into a completely dystopian world. That's been part of my teachings since I was a kid. Dr. Rudolf Steiner, clairvoyant, in 1917 said 100 years from now, which was 2017, we're going to be entering the age of Ahriman. Ahriman is basically the material deity demon. And Ahriman is actually the devil in the ancient Zoroastrian faith of my people, which my family is, against the Ahura Mazda, which is the Christ. And it's interesting that Steiner uses Ahriman as part of his cosmology. And he said in 2017, Ahriman has already begun his reign over the last 400 or 500 years, turning us into materialists, that there is no God, there is no creation, there is no higher soul outside of the physical. Ahriman represents government, science, all the crazy things they're putting in people's bodies, technocratic behavior, data capture, all the systems turning us into numbers and statistics. That's Ahrimanic. We're bone and calcified. There's no jing in the body. That's Ahrimanic. And he said by 2017, Ahriman's impulse will be at max level, and we'll have 20 years from that point. 20 years. If we don't snap out of the grip of the Ahrimanic impulse, this new generation that are all in front of the TV, that are all gaming, that are all, no sight of anything outside of the non-native electric field, we're going to enter something called the eighth sphere. And the eighth sphere is basically a burdened dystopian cesspool of a world where we have lost complete connection to spirit. Our souls are going to start losing their incarnation ability through childbirth, because childbirth is completely misaligned with what it should be. The whole portal is completely screwed up. And our connection to the soil, which is really, it was interesting because of where Zach takes it, is going to be so corrupted that we won't even have the tangible principles in our body needed to have an incubator in the body to hold a soul, to even contain the soul. And so at that point, you become a spliced, soulless zombie, if you will. And at that point, our world shifts into another epoch or another realm, and it's forgotten what it's forgotten. We've lost all connections to our inner truth and the wisdom and the plant teachers and our ancient traditionary, mothers and sisters and grandmothers and grandfathers. And I meditate on that. I don't look at it like how the movies put it, and Skynet strikes midnight and someone presses a button and there's an explosion, and that's all the Hollywood, all the movies. It's like it's a combination of are they trying to desensitize us about these zombie apocalypses and the world blowing up and this crazy underground world, or this mission to Mars and all this stuff? We're going to have to go and live in some other, galaxy or whatever. It's really interesting. There's so much misdirection right now that's going on. And I think it's gotten to the point where it's confused so many people. There's so many people that just I don't even know where my footing is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I listening to? And that's a form of, that's obviously psychological warfare. It's a psyop, but it's also, that's a form of divide and conquer. You're dividing and divisionalizing people that ultimately all want the same thing. They want love. They want to be part of a productive society. They want to feel like they're seen. They want to be doing things that they love to do. They don't want to be living in a false narrative, because that brings a false identity, which then brings a whole list of other issues. And from there you have, drugs and other psychotherapy drugs, and you have the pharmaceutical industry all playing its part to perfection. We're in that fragile ecosystem right now. And so if it's 2027 and this genetic morphogenic field expands in all of us, and it's an aha moment, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I do know for a fact, I can say this with pure discernment, not judgment. There's no fear. This is a science mind looking at it. We are treading very, very lightly right now. We're about to sink. If we don't snap out of this and remove this spell, what some people call it a Wetiko virus, some people call it the cosmic casting spell, or some kind of parasitic energy, because it is parasitic. All the systems in the world are parasitic by nature. They have to. They're feeding off people, kind of like the Matrix. The Matrix is surviving off the BTU energies of the electrical body. And so it's the same thing. If we don't shed the parasite or eviscerate it at its spine, we're going into another realm of living, and that's not going to be pretty. And technology is not going to save us. And we have to be very prudent right now. And these types of conversations have to be taken very serious. And there's one way of thinking where you become a prepper, and it's about isolation, and it's about you do not enter our camp and that energy. That's one way of doing it. I don't think that's the answer. I think we have to do it through people need to be expanding at an early age and getting to a place of position or power so we can start putting together the forces that are needed to wake the fuck up. Because at this rate right now, again, it's not a pretty sight. It's not a pretty destiny. And it's actually terrifying when you really think about it, because I plan on having children one day, and I haven't had kids yet just because of what I feel is going on. Mm-hmm. I haven't felt comfortable. And the only way I think about, okay, I'm going to have kids is, okay, I got to get out into our property in Hawaii and barricade ourselves out in the jungles of the island, and just we're growing our own food, and we have no idea what's going on outside of us, and we're creating our own micro reality. And that might be a way, but that's terrible. Like we live in this beautiful plane of existence, and to think that you have so much misalignment out there, there's so much greed, so much war, so much disposition of pain, so much suffering. And I get it. There's no wonder why everyone's escaping. There's no wonder why, everyone is just wanting to find pleasure in the moment. And that pleasure comes in any way, any form. Some of them could even be healthy forms, but it's an escapism behavior. It's not just alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling. It's food. It's being an asshole. It's being miserable. Like, some people, that's their form of escapism because that's all they know. That's their comfort zone. And they don't have the toolbox. Mm-hmm. So what do? We have these kinds of conversations, and then we really take action. And that's really what Symbiotica represented. I was just like, we know the pharmaceutical industry is just treating symptoms. Symptomology 101, symptomology 300, symptomology 10,000. Okay, we get it. How are we going to, break away from that form of thinking, that allopathic form of thinking? And Symbiotica was formed because I saw there was a problem in the supplement industry. It's the same thing. It's parasitic. Same bad actors get in there, and it becomes a race to the bottom in terms of product development. Nobody cares. There's just marketing companies that are slapping their label on things, get a few famous people, and then boom, all of a sudden you have this successful brand. That's not what we stand for. That's not what I stand for. Mm-hmm. And so I brought that up as just an example because that organically popped in my head. And these are things that there's things that I want to speak about that I can't. I'm the face of Symbiotica. I founded Symbiotica. I do have an incredible CEO and partner now. His name is Shahab. He's my dear, dear brother. So it's basically me and him are just in the trenches of this. But because I'm offering health advice and health products and doing all these things, I can't really get into the nitty-gritty of what I want to talk about. I'm subject to harassment. I'm subject to putting my company at risk. I've already been attacked by the mainstream media, by all the main news outlets, when a very famous tennis player decided not to do something that everyone wanted him to do. They came after me. So I've gone through these types of things, and it's troubling for me because there's so much I want to speak on to really put it on Front Street. But I'm at this moment of my life, I can only be doing that within closed circles. So what I do is, and maybe I don't need to be doing that, right? There's enough people out there, I think, that are shining the light on pure wretched darkness that is just a total disaster, total catastrophe to mankind. Maybe that's not my karma right now. Maybe I did that in my teens and my early 20s and mid 20s. Maybe right now for my 30s and early 40s run, it's more of solutions and it's more of strategy. But I don't want to be a greenwasher and, just talk about the status quo. It's not in my character. My human design, I'm a 1-3 generator. I'm an investigator. I'm an anarchist, and I'm the fucking martyr. So I would die for this, and I give it my all. I mean, I've put myself to the bitter end many times energetically, just because I can't stop. I can't stop helping people. I can't stop being a part of the solution. And so as I get more mature and I have more experience, and I realize that, I have to keep this electrical system healthy and I keep this body supple, I pick and choose how I'm flowing with it. My vision has gotten way bigger, but my circle has gotten a lot smaller. And that's why it's such a pleasure and honor to be here with you, because my circle just got a little bit bigger with you. And I'm welcomed to that circle and the connections that we have together and our tribe and our group and the epic people involved. It's really one of those things where I actually sit back and I'm like, fuck, like I'm not alone, and I want to thank you for that, because I see what you're doing and I see the energy that you hold and the truth that you're holding with such conviction and no F's, not giving an F at all. And that's it right there. And we need that. And that might scare some people, and I scare people, and I'm massive shadows for people to pop out. Their shadows are just popping out. And for men and women, I've been dealing with that for at least a decade, noticeably. And for better or for worse, I'm here for it. I'm here to shake up the system and also have the best time ever, right? That's part of our alchemy is like, today's the best day ever. It's just like, today is the best day ever. Me and David, we say that every single time. Me and Jamie, the best day ever. We're just like, this is it. We're having the best day ever. And it's that right there. It's more than a mantra. It's more than, fake it till you make it, or it's a true epigenetic switch. Right? It's the biology of belief, like Dr. Bruce Lipton says. Mm-hmm. If you know it, like as a Gnostic, you embody it. This is not just words. Then you really activate that. Mm-hmm. And that goes for everything in your health. You're scared of getting cancer. You're scared of heart disease. You're scared of lymphomas. You're scared of metabolic diseases. We now know beyond reasonable doubt that the epigenetics, epi meaning above the genetics, is the main activator for all of those things. Mm-hmm. And it can go both ways. It can turn on longevity genes. It can turn on all these different things. So I'm a scanner of things to get uncomfortable with and test myself to go through those hoops and valleys. But it's a wild ride right now, Blue, and I'm here for it.
Thanks for your willingness to dive into the shadows and to illuminate it from the inside out. And I think that there's just like so much bypassing of really what it means to genuinely do the work. And from what you've shared around your path, your journey, your mission, and what it comes with, is I feel that you are healing not just your generation, but like 7 times 7 times 7 generations back, and therefore 7 times 7 times 7 generations forward, because of your willingness to stay curious and not just be fed the narrative that everybody else is sort of chewing on, but actually asking why, listening to your intuition, and being willing to be this deviant that says, no, I'm going to do things differently, and therefore actually create a whole world from the inside out, but be willing to actually turn over the rock and look at the gunk that is at the underbelly of what actually the whole world is founded on, and therefore the world that needs to be birthed into through the embodiment of what it is that you are activating within your awareness. So it's really remarkable to just be able to bask in your stories, your wisdom, and the way that you perceive the world. And I would have to 1000% agree with you when I really come back to it. If like, okay, what is the most important thing? It's, for me, it's the people that I share this journey with. It's like, happiness for me has really truly been able to be extracted when I can share it with the people that I love. And so as crazy and weird and wild and wacky and like what the actual fuck is happening, and how did I get on this giant mud ball that is hurling through space, held into orbit by a gigantic ball of fire rotating on an axis? Like, how did I get here? And we all signed up for this at the same time. None of us really know to the fullest extent of what the fuck is going on.
If you think that's accurate, that's another conversation.
If I think like what?
All that movement, everything you just said.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't know if all that's accurate. right?
Yes.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm speaking on to what you're saying. We don't know for certain anything. Right. And that's the wildness. And that's the beauty of having these relationships.
Yeah.
Because what if everything that we know is a complete, utter lie?
100%.
What if that?
And well, actually, I think that it is to the most part.
Yeah.
Like from what we have ever been told since we were like kids.
Everything's been the opposite.
The fact that you were exposed to David Icke at the age of 12 years old already blows my prefrontal cortex. I'm like, that man even just being integrated into your life at that young
12.
age, you must have just been like, what are you all doing?
Yeah.
Like weaving the world from this perspective. Like I can imagine like, Chervin's over again. We've got to be careful with what we've got in the fridge. Like get Joe out and then just like go over everything, like all of the ingredients that we have.
I would stop my parents from arguing and be like, what are you guys talking about? Like there's reptilian underlords hybridizing and about to take over the world, and you guys are arguing about this Persian dish. Get the fuck out of here. I'm not kidding. I remember that argument many times. Your perception's your reality, right?
100%.
Whatever you perceive is just ultimately what's going to be real, whether it's lunacy or not. I'm talking about for the individual. And so that's the systems that be know that, and that's why they can play puppet master with so many people, because they can lightning strike what they want them to believe on everything. And so to speak on what you were saying before I rudely cut you off, I'm sorry. I really appreciate that, because your superpower is expanding with beautiful souls and finding love and connection and creating that kind of alchemy where it's saturating in you, as opposed to just being in a recluse, and which is part of the journey as well. There's a balance to that, and I think that's the greatest joy is just having family with you, familia, to be on this journey of exploration. Because if we don't have that, what are we doing at the end of the day?
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you.
And thank you. It's the highest excitement for me to find or feel my way into resonance.
Yeah.
And that's really the sort of like with my hearing decreasing, that's sort of the way that I'm weaving within the humans around me is based off, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how you look. It's like, how much are you living in your heart and making decisions from that place? And how many times have you made a commitment to do that? And that has accumulated the essence and the auric field and the nature of who you are. So it's not even about ever saying anything. So how does my nervous system feel in the presence of it? And then that for me is a successful connection. And so it's just like learning to listen and feel into soul family. And also on the flip side of that, we had a moment on social media the other day where we were like, oh, we're connecting on this piece, because I have an alter ego. Her name's Becky Bay, and she has this giant mouth, and she like goes off on rants about certain things that she's pissed off about. And it's really helpful for me because Blue, identified as Blue, still doesn't allow myself to really pop off about certain things that I feel kind of like, well, similar to what you said as well. Like, I just don't want to spend all this time being attacked for like really unpopular opinions. And there's also this part of me, there's very deviant nature that's like, what the actual fuck is happening in the spiritual community and all of these shocks? Yeah. I'm coming across it more times than I'm not, actually.
Sure.
Coming across spiritual leaders that are sitting on their high horse and have this like, this guru ego that is like, I am the way to this information, and kind of creating a codependent pattern on people's traumatized experience. And
that's the worst.
And so Becky Bay came out, and she was like, we had a big mouth, and she's like, all right, everybody's got like a Scouse accent. And she's like, I'm being deadly serious here. Like, what the fuck is going on with all the spiritual community and these leaders that are like, eating off people's trauma. And you chimed in, you were like, yeah, it happens more than it doesn't, or something like that.
No, I said one word. I said luciferic. That's what I said. So what you're describing is a luciferic consciousness. Are you familiar with what that term means on a deep anthroposophical level, outside of what somebody might project that to be as like a slithering demon or some kind of devil? the Lucifer is the bearer of light. It's the ego. It's the ego entrapment. It's the high priestess spiritual being who was cosmically ordained by God to be the savior of earth. That's basically what Lucifer represents. And it's also a form of thought that has been hijacked into the minds and hearts of people across this world for thousands of years. It's an impulse. And it's the polar opposite of Ahriman. So Ahriman is the material density that you are. There's no soul in you. And Lucifer is no connection to the earth, no connection to the body. It's spiritual ego. It's spiritual bypassing. It's one ayahuasca ceremony, and all of a sudden I can manage and create heaven on earth through my portal, through my energy, through my frequency, and I'm the savior of everybody. That's the impulse of exactly what you were portraying. Is it Becky?
Becky.
Where Becky was pissed off at that and was fierce at that. That's why I loved it. And I've been around it, for a while. I've been in this community for a long time, being mentored by David Avocado Wolf at age 10 and 11.
David Wolf, not David Icke.
David Wolf is my cousin. He's the one that mentored me. He introduced me to David Icke. Yeah.
I didn't introduce you like physically?
On a call.
On a call?
On a call. But then he introduced me through books and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, just introduced me to his life's work. But David was in the spiritual community from 96, 97, maybe even earlier than that. And this was the hardcore vegan community too, and the raw foodist community too. So there's all of that was there. And here's my take on it. I think there are people that are born into this world that have absolutely no connection to anything materialism, meaning they're not here to balance a checkbook. They're not here to open bank accounts. They're not here to deal with the IRS. They're not here. That's all Ahrimanic. They can't go to schools and sit in class at 7:30 a.m. and learn about, long division, which they shouldn't be. And that's a whole nother conversation we should probably drop into about how people are raising children. They're completely extracted from that on a soul level. They don't even understand that stuff. It disgusts them. They repel from it. And so those are people that usually drift off into drugs, disassociates, opiates, heavy cannabis use, heavy alcohol abuse, even getting into psychedelics, which can be a form of escapism too, if you're not treating it with intention, right? All of it. If you're running away from something, you're escaping, it becomes a drug. It's not an intentional medicine or something that you're using to have an entheogenic connection to spirit. And so people that have either left that realm of materialism or they were hardcore materialists and then all of a sudden got their head blown off from ayahuasca or 5-MeO or iboga or whatever the hell it is. They are now at the God has jumped back into their body and they're already materialists. So now it's an ego materialist that wants to be recognized as spiritual. You get what I'm saying?
100%.
Their perception of their spirit is based on how they believe others perceive that spirit. So it's almost like the Maya has been removed and they're looking at the mask of the Maya. So it's like in a mirror and they're behaving through that confusion. They're in a confused state. And I don't judge anyone that's gone through a lightning strike of ceremony that they never knew existed, and they're activating parts of their soul's journey that they've never saw before because they just had a near-death experience with some tryptamine or whatever the medicine is. That's beautiful. That's death. I've had that. I mean, I remember the first time I went into the Bufo realms. My God, my life changed after that. I had a completely new way of thinking. I was retuned, so to speak. It's just how you continue to cultivate that, because we are continuous teachers and students. Chop wood, carry water, become enlightened. You got to do the same thing over and over. If you're not doing the same thing over and over, then it can become a materialistic spiritual flow. And then it goes into other, I would say dark roads of really not, holding the medicine right. And I'm very skeptical of a lot of the medicine work in the community. I just think it's something that needs to be done with the absolute level of discernment and, really foundational indigenous practicing. Especially if you're going to take someone under your wing and hold them and incubate for them and be that rock for them in some of the most powerful, scary, earth-shattering moments, because these medicines are serious.
Yeah.
And it's blasphemy to not take them serious and to do them without intention. And so for the gaslighting and to circle it back on that, spiritual bypassing and all that stuff, those are, I think it's just people that, haven't quite committed to the work, or they possibly haven't looked at the ancients and seen our forefathers and foremothers that have cultivated this from before. It's too new age, right? I never resonated with the new age. It was interesting because I talk a lot about a lot of these deep esoteric conversations, and a lot of the right-wing Christian fan base would consider me new age, would say, hey, you're speaking new age, when in fact, I'm nowhere near new age spirituality. I don't talk about the 5D and all those. I don't use those terminologies. I'm talking about ancient practices from the Taoist immortals to the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedic perspective, the Christ perspective. I'm not just talking about Christ conscious. I'm talking about serious Christ embodiment. And it's a deep, deep, deep resonance. And it takes time. It takes practice, and it takes years of studying, right? The mystics before us, they were ritual artists. What does that mean? That means how they did anything is how they did everything. There's a reason why someone's meditating in a cave for 40 years in the dark. Is that person just crazy? No, because they're cultivated. And so today you can't just be wearing the outfits and burning the stuff and then pointing out other people's flaws and demons within them and all their hidden shadows and all that stuff. Who the fuck are you? I look at people, I'm like, who are you? What are you doing? If you want to curate and create balance and harmony without accusation and contempt, beautiful. Be part of the solution. It's when it gets too about me, then it becomes a problem. And I think all of us, to a certain degree, if I can just be completely honest, we've all had moments where we really thought foundationally like, oh, I'm here for this. I'm here for a reason. This is not random, which is true. But sometimes that can get out of hand. And when that gets out of hand, you basically you're becoming a materialist again. And I remember Steiner was really big on that. He would talk about, he actually loathed all the seances and all the spiritual mumbo jumbo, because that was starting to come really heads on in the early 19th century. And he was like, I actually find myself more connected to the materialists because you know what you were getting with them. You could trust them. This is their embodiment. It was the fake spiritual materialists that he had a problem with, and spoke about it very eloquently, non-judgmental, but was saying this is doing harm for the community, for the Theosophical Society, and also for them personally. He was worried for their soul and didn't want them to get into the ego trap of spirituality. Spirituality is, there's no rules to how you worship and how you worship yourself. But at the end of the day, it begins with the practice of self-love. And I sometimes remember, this is 2-3 years ago, and I had a little bit more time to really think about these things. Right now, I haven't really thought about these things too much lately. Our lives are in cycles, right? But I remember monitoring and seeing people out there, and you can tell who was holding the level of self-love, who is holding that authority for self versus someone who's not. And it starts with just how you take care of yourself, right? And how you take care of the vessel, and how you take care of, your relationships. That's a big one. I have come across a lot of people that are jumping from, groups to groups, to relationships, to this, to that. I meet them. They don't have a friend from 10 years ago, for 20 years ago, and stuff like that. And that's alarming for me. You know, it means that there's rocky energy and escapism behavior and shadows that are all over the place. And I feel for that soul. I'm not judging that person or anything. It's never a judgment. And so, you know, if you're listening to this, if this is triggering you in any way or making you feel a certain way, this is just me coming from a place of love and pure reverence for your soul and your life. My whole thing is, I've been through it all. I've been that a little bit. I remember that energy kind of swirling in me a little bit, where I had to keep going in my practices because I had to be this. I had to look the part and feel the part. I had to be eloquent with what I'm talking about. I had to be able to see all the patterns, and that's how I'm going to be able to be recognized, and by being recognized, that I'm validating myself. And that was a complete scam. You know, that was a complete falsity, and it was a trap. And as soon as I remember, it was like a few months of that. This is after I got into the Bufo medicine and was having all these uploads. And as soon as I was able to like sit with that and recognize that and look myself in the mirror, everything released and everything started to flow into place. And and people talk about, how do you manifest, Chervin? How do you create this massive, massive company? How are you involved in all of these different things? It's through super sensible knowledge, meaning logic. I apply real logic. And I'm not talking about, you know, Newton's law logic or Darwinistic logic. I'm talking about what is logical in my reality. And that's evaluating every decision that I've been making, the patterns that I have, the relationships that I have, my day-to-day, what puts me in a good mood, what takes me out of my mood, and really monitoring these things so I become a sophisticated, self-loving person. Because that takes practice. And if you're listening to this, ask yourself, are you worth it? Are you worth the upgrade? Like, why do I jump into a cold plunge? Why do I jump into a cold river? Why do I fast 2-3 days out of the month? You know, why am I taking all of these drastic measures to make sure my body is healthy? Why am I, not eating all the food that's thrown out there? Why am I doing? Well, that's practice of self-love. Of course, I want to go have gelato right now and have some, have some drinks and do all that kind of stuff. It's fun. It's part of this life. It's part of this material world. But self-love has brought me to a place where I can find balance, and I'm committed to my growth, as opposed to just, hijacking somebody else or parasitically taking somebody else or things like that. I think ultimately, to get to where we want to go, we have to look inwards and see how we are showing up for ourselves and the impact we're having on the people around us. That's it. Well, we get that, then all of a sudden we have a path to success. We have a road to success because we now have healthy, cultivated people that are bringing something to the table. That's what I need in my life. I mean, I'm open to help everyone. I'm all for that, but I need an energy exchange at this point. I can't just be. My bucket can't be empty every time, every week, every month, every year, because this life is going by. And so I think this is a good perspective for someone to have that, might be like in some kind of amnesia, and just kind of snap out of that.
Such a brilliantly unique and also deeply resonant perspective of really understanding what I feel, but not have really been able to put logic behind it or a deeper understanding of context, but more so just like, I feel expansion and I feel like an opening in this presence of this individual. And then there's another person could be wearing the same thing, saying the same thing, but my body just goes like, oh. And then there's also the what feels like the overuse of medicines in the spiritual community too. And it's my body's like having like a contraction around it. And just the way that you described a little bit about essentially the split that can happen. And this is the cunning nature of the ego, where it looks identical to us, almost. Like it's almost hard to decipher between the two sometimes, because the ego can be very cunning in that sense. And also at the same time, I think that it is feeding this split and of this identification that then needs to prove something to the world, and then is deeply rooted in a self-judgment that then ultimately is then judging everybody around us with having this kind of veneer of this like spirituality piece. So it's like this really murky arena, and it does create the differentiation between prayer and performance.
Yeah, very well said. I love the veneer analogy. You know, and that veneer starts to rot, and then you got to get a new veneer, right? Because it's a perpetual cycle, you know, and it's tough to experience it and witness it. But the beautiful thing is that this is also something that in one breath and in one conversation and one, you know, view of the ocean, you can change all of it, you know, and I've seen that happen. I've seen, just cultivation come out of nowhere from people. Just they had that aha moment. And I think in this life we have, you know, maybe 10 moments, maybe 20 moments where we have these moments where the writing's on the wall. You know, it could be listening to this podcast, or it could be anything. It could be an experience with a loved one, you know. But are we receiving it and taking cues from it? Or are we, you know, just suppressing it and putting it away?
Oh, when you're sharing it, I'm checking myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's bring it back to the drawing board, Blue. Like, let's like check in again, because it's not something that's just like, okay, I am integrated and in my integrity on my spiritual path now and for always. Yeah. It's a constant checking in. And I think that that's also the importance of having really solid individuals around us that love us so much that they will actually tell us the truth. They're like, hey, Blue, so just noticed that like that came out a little sideways, and I just wanted to reflect it back to you because it landed really strange in my body. Oh, okay, amazing, brilliant. Like, let's have a conversation and let's see which part is mine, which may be any part of this may be a projection, but the way that the conversation is intended is for a deeper level of intimacy, for me to actually understand myself more so that I can serve from the purest place of my being, and to have the solid individuals around us that genuinely love us enough to check us.
I love that. Hallelujah. I'm so happy you have that in your life. No, yeah, there it is, Reggie right there. And so that's you offering, you know, your beloved sister, your beloved brother, your partner, not the authority, but the recognition that you trust them, you know, and that's built through, I think that's built through time. And I think that's built through cultivation and experience. It's the seed has been planted, but when you know, like, we plant all kinds of crazy stuff. We grow cacao. We grow the best mangoes on earth. You know, we have a biodynamic farm on the island. We grow the most incredible fruits you could ever even imagine. The soursops we have, the durian we have. But when you cultivate that, you don't just drop a seed over there and walk away. You know, you tend to it. You cultivate it. You speak to it. You love it. You nourish it as it starts to seed up, starts to sprout out. Then you start protecting it. You're making sure that it's getting the right sun, depending on the variety, all that stuff. It's the same thing with relationships. It's a full-on investment, and it's a discipline. I always say relationships, not just your spouse, but everything. It's discipline. You know, you have to become a disciple. Right? And that is the greatest love you can offer anyone and yourself, to cultivate that. That's the greatest joy in life. And to see people in drama and pain and suffering and frustration and certain themes in the relationship world is just devastating. And it's I think, you know, your audience is listening to this. They're in this ecosystem of thought. But if you look at the mainstream, it's built on the opposite. It's built on deceit. It's built on lies and corruption. And that is the allure of it. We've gotten to that point where this is now the attraction part, is this type of behavior and this type of energy field, where this level of cultivation is uncomfortable. It's, you know, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't allow me to have freedom. It doesn't allow me to have this. I want to continue to just only show you one side of me. And that's a dangerous game we're playing. And I've been there myself. You know, I'm a work in progress. You know, like vulnerability is the superpower of life, right? And so I feel like I can speak on this because I'm a human being and I've experienced this too. We all have. And we have to like have that understanding and compassion for ourselves, right? Because when we start going inwards and having compassion for ourselves, we can then receive our friend and experience them. And we know that we can offer guidance and know that that's going to be received from a place of love and not from a place of judgment. And that's how we grow. You know, if you're over here and I'm just saying this hypothetically, I don't know that. If I go investigate your municipal water over here and I don't see that you're using the right filtration systems and you're bathing in municipal water here, I'm not going to judge you. You get what I'm saying? I won't judge you for it. But because of my background, my experience, what I know about municipal water and all the contaminants in there and the bicarbonates in there and the trihalomethanes, you probably don't want to be breathing that and absorbing it through your skin. So I'll go through that process and I'll teach you why. And I won't just tell you, I'll teach you. And that's the same thing. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you don't understand what it is, you're not going to evolve with it. It's just like in middle school or high school. If you're cramming for a test, you're going to pass that test. You're going to get an A on that test. But 3 days later, you'd flunk that. It didn't withstand into the cortex. It didn't withstand into your thought. It didn't reach your loins because you were just memorizing, right? It's the same thing with how we communicate and show up for people. We don't point out their flaws. We don't point out their things that we feel they're out of alignment with. We sit with them and we explain to them what this experience looks like, where we're coming from, and we create dialogue. This is beyond nonviolent communication. We're talking about serious epigenetic work, code system work. What the hell is the gene keys all about? I mean, the gene keys is literally the pattern system, the fluid poetry of life based on this main perspective that we're talking about right now. How do we evolve and grow through the experiences of life, through the trust and the awareness of who we're dealing with and who we are? And that's the ultimate cultivation. And that's why things are individualized. I don't think, you know, this whole thing where, you know, let's say I have 2 kids. Well, you know, Ryan is this way, but Christina's like that. I wish Christina was more like Ryan. You know, can you just be more like your brother? That's insanity. Christina is a completely different soul than Ryan, with a completely different set of instructions and a completely different way of receiving all the dynamic information of life from thoughts and sounds and emotions and feelings and reactions. It's completely different. Imagine we take that principle and apply it to ourselves and our entire sphere of influence. First, forget about getting into the macro, into the, you know, second level, tertiary level. We're talking about just in our sphere of influence and ourselves. Watch what happens. Watch what happens. That's a level of cultivation and discipline that's needed. And this conversation, I really appreciate this, Blue, because I'm now getting inspired. I have no idea what we were going to talk about today. This all right here is a channel, and it's inspiring me to redevelop more faculties within me and to ultimately to take my own advice. So I appreciate it.
I never know what's going to come through, but once that prayer at the beginning is put in place and we open up the space and just trust, you know, may everything flow through our heart without touching our mind.
I'm getting emotional.
And
yeah, thank you. I really mean it. Yeah, it's yeah.
There's been some sacred tushis on these golden hands. And your sacred tushi has now blessed this podcast with your heart's truth. And it's really deeply felt. And I'm definitely going to go back over this podcast and watch it like at least 3 more times and sit down with notes. And it's so beautiful to feel your heart and your vulnerability. Yeah.
It's a beautiful ride. You know? Yeah. It's just when you really feel it's just waves, you know, just you love so hard. You know, yeah. And so thank you for having this incubator.
It's truly such an honor.
Yeah.
Like your wisdom and your devotion to this path and your willingness to be the black dragon.
Yeah.
The willingness to actually look under the underbelly of the beast and to actually be the one that says, like, this is what I see and this is how I'm going to create a more beautiful world, from the microbiome of my gut to every single 75 trillion cells of my body, to the way that I love my beloved, to the way that I weave with my community, to the business that I create, and to the uncomfortable truths that I stand in on public platforms. Like, you are so seen in what it is that you're creating and so deeply cherished by all of us. And I'm so grateful that you have blessed the Deja Blu podcast with your wisdom. And it is such a gift to be able to get to know you more.
That's all reciprocated to the highest level and the clearest level of crystal clarity in my crystalline structure in my body. It's all coded and it's all received. Every cell in my body's tingling right now, just pure utter love. And I think I'm getting emotional here because I'm just thinking about the journey, and I'm thinking about everyone that I love and all the new people in my life. And I feel so honored. I just, I'm thinking about my dad and what he did to make me happen. And this whole thing is just the dance of life is the most beautiful, song ever. And I'm here for it. So appreciate that. And I can't wait to keep expanding with you and your tribe. Yeah.
And massive, massive, massive appreciations to your father for gifting you the gift of unconditional love. And for being the mother and the father in your experience, so that the foundation and the root of who you are and the way that you weave in the world is founded from a place of love. Even in the uncomfortable truths, that's your foundation. And so big ups to your papa that is always with you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Yeah. Oh. Next time, let's get into some serious health. Let's get into the physical health. I'd love to drop into that and see how that, completely aligns with everything we talked about today. That's part of it. And then from there, I would like to get into children and really just explain what the Waldorf method is and what biodynamic farming is. I think these are key parts of the entire system that need to be understood and fully cultivated for us to have a chance for that 2027, miracle. Yeah.
And according to the Gene Keys, all the children that are born after the year of 2027 are born with a heightened state of awareness and more activation within their DNA, like their access to the 12-strand DNA. So the children that are born from that year onwards are coming in with all of the codes already. We're
ready for them.
Huh?
We're ready for them.
Oh, let's go. There's a whole team of beings that are like, all right, let's come in. We've done the work. You don't have to process that trauma anymore. You can just go from a get-go. We're still processing the trauma of our parents, but they don't have to process the trauma for us because we've stood in the firing line and we've done it together as equals, standing side by side, like with our peace paint on, with our shakers and our drums, and we're moving one foot at a time, but together. And then now that we are paving the path for the next generation to come with this heightened sense of awareness, the 12-strand DNA activation, and they're not having to process our trauma. So there is we're oscillating in this really interesting, beautiful, where beauty and chaos sit side by side in this dance of the dark and the light, the polarities of the human existence, and the two timelines that we can really truly go. But there is a deep level of responsibility, our ability to respond, of recognizing we are ready for a more beautiful world than our hearts know is possible, and it starts right here, right now, and in this conversation and everything that we touch from this point forward. So it's an honor to be an ally, brother.
I'm here for all that. That's the best news of all time. I mean, hallelujah. I'm curious, at 2027, when exactly, when the baby ges birthed out, or day 40 in the womb? I need some numbers here because I need a plan around this.
Yeah. Let's put it on the schedule. We can ask Richard during the
I'll ask Richard because I'm under the impression that the soul carnates into the womb somewhere around day 40, 45. That's usually when dimethyltryptamine starts to trickle out. And a lot of the ancients believe that's the same time the soul incarnates. So, but by the way, that's another, we'll get into psychedelics and all that on another conversation.
I would like
so
to
many
have
avenues to drop into.
I would like to have you as like a reoccurring guest because I feel like there's like infinite amount of files that I could have opened today, and my curiosity is like going in so many different directions. But I would love to do like part 2, and then these are the files that we're going to access.
That's what this whole thing's all about, right?
Yeah.
We're not. This isn't some like mainstream podcast. Tell me your life story nonsense. No, we're here to cultivate magic and evolve ourselves and there's an audience that's receiving this, and then they reciprocate this out. It's just like 100 monkey effect, right? And so I'm here to go down every avenue with you. I feel very comfortable in your presence, so I'm here for it.
I'm so grateful. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, soul family. Appreciate you.
And your greatest gift you could ever give, which is your time and your presence, and for making the drive up here, both of you, and for showing up and being willing to just share your medicine far and wide. So grateful.
Greatest honor of my life.
Yeah. Beautiful humans. What an amazing episode. And managed to make him cry. Yes, let's go. So if you resonated with today's episode, then please go ahead and share this link in your stories. Tag both of us. All of Chervin's information is in the show notes. May this inspire you and activate you into a deeper level of responsibility of what it is that we are living in and the very, very important times that we have found ourselves incarnated into, and also the magic that is available when we start taking responsibility from the inside out. Until next week, sending you so much love.